But the very thing that caused me fear at one point of my life gave me the motivation to say, no, I can still live on the other side of this. So
hello and welcome to the Family Business with the Alessis, because we all know that family is everybody's business. And today I'm opening up because we're doing something cool. Of course, we're here with my sister, Stephanie Muiña. Good to have you. If you don't know me, I'm Chris Alessi. But we're here today to really talk about the new author, Pastor Dad Steve Alessi. Here he is. This is exciting.
Yeah, and I'm being interviewed on my own podcast.
We're interviewing you, which we just threw it at him, by the way. Right before we counted down, I said, hey, we're going to interview you. But it's really because, this podcast, our audience has been hearing for a long time about 42 and what that means for our church and how that stems from a point in your life that we've talked a lot about.
Yeah.
But you're releasing a book about it now, and it's a guide to finishing well when you were almost finished.
Yes. Well, first, thanks for having me on the podcast today.
Glad you're here. Glad you're here.
I am too. It's very nice to be able
Glad
to
you made
sit
time for us.
in the studio with Christopher, my son, and Stephanie, my daughter. It is, Chris. It's a special time to be able to talk about 42, the actual name of the book that is describing the 42 minutes that the paramedics worked on me when I had the Widowmaker heart attack. It was almost 15 years ago, 2007. So we're at that period where I can finally put it in print, which we have done. And when you do see it on the back side, it says, if you're not dead, God's not done.
Yes.
And we're excited. It's coming out right around Easter. And we will be talking about it quite a bit from at least the story aspect, because I believe my 42 is just representative of other people who have their own 42 moments. Because, guys, when I was having my heart attack, David and Tony were losing their business.
Yep.
My heart attack, my 42 was a heart attack. Theirs was a business meltdown from one day to the next. And how many others are experiencing their own 42? Divorce, unexpected death of a loved one, financial ruin.
Yeah.
There's that challenge that hits you in life, and you have to sit back and say, all right, I may feel like I'm finished, but there's more life to be lived.
Amen.
Yeah. And you know what's crazy? And Steph, obviously, we'll give you a second to chime in, but we just did a CPR training for our team this Saturday. So the guy was talking about how to get the AED, how it will shock people.
Yep.
And so we actually stood up at the end of the whole training, and John actually got us started by saying, hey, this is really important to us.
Yeah.
You know, we started telling him, Eddie was wearing a 42 shirt. So we were talking about it. When the instructor found out that they worked on you for that long, he couldn't fathom it. And then when we told him that there was 7 shocks with the pads, that you were awake for the last one, it felt like someone dropped you off a 2-story building. He could not fathom that they worked that long and that hard on you. So it just completely shifted the whole dynamic of the room, because they worked for 42 minutes.
Crazy.
They did. And it describes how I felt when I saw them the next day after the heart attack. And these paramedics came to visit me when I was in ICU. You guys couldn't even come to visit. Mom couldn't hardly come to visit. But these guys came in to follow up because they said, man, we remembered. It was a long day. They wanted to check on me. Matter of fact, the paramedics that I reached out to not too long ago to let them know the book's being released, I wanted to acknowledge them in the book. One of them sent me a text back and said, I used that experience as part of the training for new recruits today. So it was a real deal. And I talk about it being, when I had my heart attack, I talk about that. But not too many people realize just how close to death. I was. And so even Margie, Margie in our church works for my cardiologist. Yeah, that's all right.
On our
cardiologist.
She works at a cardiologist.
Yes, she is. She let me know, Steve, no, you coded. I got your file. It's in the records. So it was there.
Well, you just said a great word, and this is where we want to talk about in this podcast today. You talked about how they use that for training. And the truth is, as your children, we did not realize how much we would use that moment as training for us in our own situations.
Yeah.
And the reason we wrote the book, it's not just an autobiography. It really is a guide for other people to do the same. You mentioned financial ruin or divorce. It wasn't either of those for us, but maybe there's still other 42 moments to be out there for us.
Yeah.
But we have already overcome certain things in our younger lives strictly because we watched you overcome that. I remember something funny, and Steph, you'll remember this, but so we were in the condo next to you while this was going on, and either Rock Band or Guitar Hero had just come out.
Oh, no.
I think it was Rock Band, though, because I think we were using multiple instruments.
Yeah, whatever it was.
And Mom comes, so we're just, we're playing, because you guys were setting up the apartment. So we're playing, we're having a good time, me and the 3 girls. And Mom comes in as we're playing Rock Band and is like, hey, keep the girls in here. Well,
says this to you.
Says this to me.
How old are you at this time?
I'm 14, 15 years old. So I just became puffed up. Like, Mom says they have to listen to me. And so I remember I say nothing, but after a couple of minutes, the girls are wanting to go over to either ask Mom a question or whatever. And it became the biggest fight, having to keep the girls away from that door.
Because we overheard Mom say that. And we were like, oh no, that is not happening. They are not keeping us away from what's going on next door.
And we're not going to listen to Chris.
FOMO.
And we're not going to FOMO. Actually, yeah, to be more clear, it was just me. Lauren and Gabby were very fine listening to Mom telling you to keep us over there. I was the one that could not handle that something was going on next door that I could not be a part of.
And that door had a little window and a screen.
Yep.
And so they were running over. And I remember having to pull Steph away at points. That's how I ended up getting a glimpse of them taking you down on the stretcher.
Yeah.
So it was crazy because we didn't know what was going on, but it caused a fight. We were fighting. And we didn't realize how much that watching that play out, having to fight, all of that, we didn't know how much that would set us up in our own lives to fight, to receive training and to be better. So I'll go into mine in a minute, but Steph, if just real quick in a minute or two, how many times have you had to finish well, even though you thought you were finished? And how do we pull on the material in the book, but also what we learned from Dad?
It's a very big question to ask with only 2 minutes. I guess I would say I remember one of my biggest memories from that whole season was way after the heart attack. About 2 months after we came home, we were in Miami. You were out of the hospital. You were recovered. And I walk into your room late one night, and you were sitting on your bed, crying in your bed. And I went up beside you and I said, Dad, why are you crying? And I'm crying with you because to see your dad cry, it just gets you. And you had worship music playing on your computer or your phone. And you just looked at me and you were like, Steph, God saved my life.
Wow.
I almost died. And it's hitting me almost every day that God saved my life. And that reflection of what God brought you through and the darkness that you saw, and to see how far God went to save your life, that always left a mark on me. I'll always remember that night. I remember exactly where you sat, exactly what you were wearing, because I saw my dad, the strongest man in my life, feel so humbled by what God did for him. And he cried about it. And he wasn't afraid to cry about it. And I think what that taught me was look back on what the Lord does for your life, how far the Lord takes you. Sorry, I got deep real fast there. You told me 2 minutes, but that really is something that taught me. Reflect on how far God went for you, and be humbled by how far he went for you, and remember that.
Yeah.
And don't forget that. And if it makes you cry, then cry. Because it's an emotional journey, and it's crazy how far we'll go to save somebody that he loves.
Yeah. Well, this is why it's right here, that little emotion breakdown there. It's taken so long to put these words into print, because every time I reflect, I just can't help but think,
that close.
How much could have been missed sitting here all these years later? Steph, you gave us a beautiful baby girl. Chris, you're about to give us a beautiful, handsome, hopefully athletic, poor guy, Marino, baby
Big old
boy.
dude.
How much could have been missed
I know.
by that, which just makes me think, at the taping, the time of this taping, today is, I believe, it's National um, Syndrome Day.
Hmm.
And we were just with a bunch of our chaplains over at meeting the new chief of police here in Doral. And when he went around the table asking us about our different kids, one of the chaplains is a precious rabbi. And he says, yeah, I have 10 kids. And he says,
Jeez.
one of them has Down syndrome. And the chief says, oh, today's National Day
Down
of
syndrome.
Down syndrome. And to recognize those with it. And he says, the chaplain, the rabbi says, no, every day for me is
Oh,
Down syndrome day. Having to deal with things like that in life is exactly what this book is about.
yeah.
Because you look at something like that, even the story of a precious young man that we've seen born and raised in this church, Nick Gomez, Melanie and Tony Gomez share their story that we also put in the book just because it inspired me at the time when I was going through what I was going through.
Yeah.
People sometimes will take a hit in life and they're that close, and it is emotional.
Well, here's the thing that I love about that. Did you really recognize that your daughter at the time would remember that
No.
conversation?
She never shared that with me before.
No.
Mm.
And it proves
Yeah.
that to anybody going through their moment right now,
Yeah.
you have no idea who's watching you,
Mhm.
Yes.
who's picking up and learning. Why do you need a guide to finish well? Because you're not finished,
Mhm.
and there are people that are watching.
Yeah.
I was talking to AP about it when we were going over through this. When he was a young dad, he didn't know what he was doing. He had to figure it out. He had no idea that his sons were watching him
Crazy.
figure this out and think if dad figured it out, we can too.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, when you consider, you remember that moment.
I
didn't
do.
even hear that moment.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I wonder, can you reshape the moments that your kids remember? Because the truth is, I'm on the other side of the spectrum. I don't remember anything.
Right.
I don't remember anything. I think I remember the fighting. I remember a couple images, but I'm almost shocked when we talk about you having a heart attack. I'm almost like, what?
Right.
I
There's no
know.
way that happened.
I know.
The reason for that, though, is the way you lived your life after that. I don't think you ever looked like a heart attack victim.
Yeah.
That's good.
You never did.
Mm.
You found a way, and I'm not even talking about 16 years later. I'm talking about 16 days later. Like,
Right.
you found a way to say, that is not what I will be remembered for or as. And so I do not think people look at you and think that there was some massive
Health issue.
Mhm.
No.
I don't think people recognize that no matter what they're going through now, they could use today
Right.
to be a buffer between that reality and the new one.
Yep.
And they could build their life to a place where no one remembers
Mhm.
the financial crisis. The Burks
Right.
have done that.
Yeah.
So many
it's true.
people, David Martinez is a part of that. You don't even remember they went through that
No.
crisis.
Yeah.
Right.
So you need this guide to finish well, because when we faced smaller moments, but
Yeah.
still moments for us, one of the biggest things that terrified me is, oh, shoot, will this always be a small moment of my story? Will people ever be able to see me without thinking about the moment
Yep.
where I struggled here?
I
Right.
know.
And the answer is, yeah, they will forget if you forget and move on.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm.
Chris, that's true. But, I was talking to somebody last week, and they were talking about something that caused them fear and stress and anxiety. And I said, I hate to go back to my story about the heart attack, but let me go back. When I had the heart attack, prior to, I struggled with the fear of having a heart attack.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you where that came from, other than when I was a kid, and like 12, 10, 12, something like that. After church one day, we all went to eat at a restaurant. It was, I think, maybe La Carreta at the time, or another Spanish restaurant that would have been on 87th Avenue in Coral Way.
Wow.
So we're after church. There was a little mall over there, strip mall, and that's where we lived in Westchester. And after church, we went to eat. In the middle of dinner, a gentleman by the name of Clay Jarrett
Jeez.
grabbed his chest,
Oh, man.
and right in front of us all
No.
was having a heart attack. Okay? Paramedics got there, wheeled him out, took care of him. He survived. Survived 2 more heart attacks.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
He's stuck
Later
on
on in his
life.
So get this. Somewhere was lodged in my mind
Yeah.
The fear of
a
that.
fear of it. And then
Oh,
when
yeah.
Papa used to have high blood pressure, he'd always be taking medication.
Oh yeah.
There was that thought, okay, my grandfather died of a heart attack in his 60s, okay? And so I just always kind of put Papa passing, which was Papa's Papa,
Your
my
papa.
Yeah.
my Papa, him passing,
Clay
Papa,
Jarrett.
my dad having to
High
take
blood.
blood pressure medication, Clay Jarrett's heart attack.
Mm-mm.
And all that stayed in my mind. So when all of a sudden I started to feel the pain move from my shoulder to the middle of my chest, I heard that phrase from Job, that which I feared the most has come upon me.
Wow.
So that thing,
That's crazy.
I'm like, wow, this was this hidden deal that I was always so afraid of
Yes.
coming at me, that would be my issue, right?
Yeah.
Well, the very thing then that caused me fear, that I felt like, shucks, I failed, that I feared it and it came upon me, was the very image I had to help me get out of it. Because I remember saying to myself, the next day when I woke up, and I said, gosh, I remember Clay Jarrett having that heart attack. I then said, yes, but he had two more after that, and he survived. So, Steve, you can survive. Whether
Yeah.
it's a 1 more heart attack in the future, whatever, because that was
Yeah.
there. Oh, if he had 2, I'll have 2. However,
Yeah.
if it hit me one time, it'll hit me. But the very thing that caused me fear at one point of my life gave me the motivation to say, no, I can still live on the
So
other
good.
side of this. So, yes, whatever is hitting our audience, whatever comes against them, as bad as it is, there's also hope on the other side of it. And I hope
Yes.
this book provides that.
Yeah.
Because when you do look at me today, it's like the Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego that were thrown into
There's
the fire.
no
Yeah.
smoke.
There's no smoke.
fire.
There's no smell of smoke. You don't
Nothing.
realize it. I got to tell people.
Yeah.
And other than my gray hair, they're like, oh, you're not 62.
No, for real.
You don't look like you're sick.
No.
You don't look like you had a heart issue. But I got a stent to prove it.
Well,
No, man.
go ahead.
I think what I love about that is it's so normal to remember all the bad stories. That's so normal. You remember the person in your family that just had 3 marriages. You remember that one best friend that ended up lonely because they weren't committed to their friends. You always remember the bad choices people make, and you just believe that if you make one small bad choice, you're going to end up just like that person. But I love that your mind thought, well, look at the good side. He survived.
He survived.
And I think that's so important for us to remember that if we have our 42 moment that maybe we brought on ourselves, we made the mistake. Yeah, we made the bad choice. Don't forget to finish the story.
Yeah.
Don't forget to finish how I made that mistake. Yes, I'm going through a divorce, but I found God redeemed my life by bringing another person into my life. I made the better choices. I repented from those bad choices in the past. I got around the right leaders, and I became a better person after my 42 moment. Don't forget to share that part of the story.
Yeah.
Because young people like us that are still at the first season of our life, we remember those. It's so easy to remember the bad stories, but it gives us something to hold on to when we're face to face with our own 42 moment.
Yeah. And you're going to have it. Chris, have you had a 42 you felt like in your young life yet?
I would say so.
Yeah.
I would say my most recent book came from that. But I so connect with what Dad was just saying about, almost kind of putting these puzzle pieces together. They don't really fit, but fear makes them all fit.
Yes.
And I remember Mom's father, my grandfather on that side, just didn't finish well.
No.
At all. Never met the guy until he passed away. Not a pretty picture. And you've said on this very podcast that her parents should have never gotten divorced. Your parents, by the grace of God, didn't. Just didn't make any sense. And I remember when he passed away, Mom looked at me and made some kind of statement about, with tears in her eyes. And she said, "You remind me so much of him." Now, she was grieving. She was grieving him. And she was
it's the worst thing to
she
say
was
to my
grieving
brother, man.
the good in him.
Yeah.
Because when you would watch him minister, it was a lot like the way that I do.
Yeah.
Larger than life. Funniest person to ever walk the planet. The stuff like when you think
Like,
of,
that's
of
you.
me, it's just so
That's
me.
a lot like you.
That's what she
Man.
meant.
Yes.
Well, little did Mom know that I had my own Clay Jarrett.
Yeah.
I have a pastor friend that said that he had to perform a funeral for a 17-year-old kid that passed away.
Mm.
And he felt like a spirit of death jumped on him. And he couldn't get out of it for like a year.
Yeah.
And at the time, I was like, dude, you should have called me a year ago. I would have talked you out of that nonsense. But that was lingering in the back of my head, that this guy went through this thing for a year. Now Mom's telling me that this man who didn't finish well, after he died, that spirit's got to go somewhere in my mind. I'm like, logically, it's got to be me.
Yeah.
And I just had this image in my head of a future I couldn't escape.
Yeah.
I was going to become a bad person.
Mhm.
I just couldn't escape it.
I know.
And it was talking to you, being vocal about it, coming out, but then also recognizing.
We know you're
like
not.
I have to discuss what's going on. I can't let it just live up here. I have to discuss this. Seeing you have to put all that behind you, and then looking at Papa, seeing that you did not smell smoke on him.
Yeah.
And we would hear you talk about certain seasons of his life and be like, there's no way that could be him. And to see these two situations juxtaposed against each other, they have the same name, but they couldn't have been any more different.
So true.
It blew my mind, and it helped me see, oh my gosh, I am not at the mercy of a day.
Mm.
I like you weren't. I can make choices and
Yes.
and shape my life. And I don't think people recognize that
Mhm.
you literally got off the mat, Dad.
Yeah.
You literally got off the mat. If you could, anyone else can.
Yeah.
And so that was mine. And I don't feel like I smell like smoke
No.
from
No.
that season
No.
that terrorized me.
Well, not that you have to go through a 42 moment, but if you ever do, here's what I would love to be able to say about our family. Even though you're Muiña now, you still got Alessi in your blood.
Yes.
We're fighters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My father was a fighter.
Yes,
he
he
was.
was.
He fought for his family. He fought for the kingdom. He fought for right things. I love that about Papa and miss that about Papa.
Yeah.
I'll never forget when he went to fight for me when I was a young guy and I made some mistakes and stood before a group of ministers. And man, Papa was right there next to me to defend me. And he got so ticked. And we joked later because he says, I put a hex on all of them. And one of them passed away rather young. We're like, wow, Papa. He says, yeah, I picked up some of that Alessi voodoo that my grandmother had back in Italy, and I put peppers on them, and I put garlic, and I'm like, wow, you were serious.
He said, I don't know who I prayed to, but
Yeah, right.
I remember that.
Pastor John, is that you?
Oh my God.
He always fought, and I always picked up that as like, no, if Papa can fight, man, I'm gonna fight.
Yes.
We're not gonna stay down. We can't stay down.
Yeah.
And Steph, you'll appreciate this because when Mom and I were up at the condo and all of y'all were here, I can't even remember who was taking care of y'all.
When you were in the hospital?
When Mom and I were up there, stayed for another couple of months, and y'all were down here still having to go to school and everything. Who stayed with y'all?
Probably Maureen David, church
Yeah,
people.
church
We stayed
people.
at their house a lot too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'll never forget, like 3 or 4 days in, again, emotionally just a wreck. And now I'm home in the condo with Mom, and I get in the shower, and all of a sudden she comes in the shower with me. No, it wasn't sexy or anything like that. We both wept in the shower, just wept, holding on to each other because we realized how close that was.
Wow.
And it was like, man. And then the thing in my head after that, this is why I appreciate having that image of Clay Jarrett getting over it, was I didn't want to be feeble. I started to feel frail, old, and I was only 46, not even 47 yet. And I started to feel old, and I didn't like that. But I remember Jarrett. No, man, he had it, but he stayed strong. And I got to fight, got to be strong. So all these years later, we can finish well. And I have you here at the table because part of finishing well is we work together.
Yeah.
Told Mom last night in the kitchen, I love going to work with my kids. I love that. I really do.
It's
We
really
get to
fun.
extend, thank God you all go to your own home so we don't get too tired of
Too
each
crazy,
other.
I know.
But then
Amen.
that you're bringing grandchildren to the mix,
It's amazing.
talk about finishing well.
And Dad, I know that story is a little, some people might be like, why the heck did you just share a story of you and your wife in the shower? But what I love about
With
that,
our bathing suits.
with your bathing suits on, fully clothed. But what I love about that is you are a strong man. I really have not met a stronger man, but
Your husband's pretty strong, babe.
my husband he's the strongest man I know. You're second. And
Well, you don't have to go that far.
you're third. I'm just kidding.
Thank you.
No, but let me finish this point.
I don't know if I want you to finish the point after that comment. But go ahead. I'm second.
You are
Okay, go.
No, you're 42nd.
What?
I'm just kidding. No, I love how you allowed all of the tragedies in your life to bring you closer to Mom.
Yeah.
You never isolated yourself. You never let any pride get in the way there. And it's the strength that I see in y'all's marriage where you have seen the worst in each other and you guys love each other even more for it.
Yeah.
And now that I'm married and I see that's a choice you have to make. That's not something that comes naturally. And I'm so grateful that you allowed your pain, your 42 moment to only to make you more open to your family and your kids and more humble with your family and closer to us.
Mhm.
You let us in on your process.
Yeah.
You didn't hide us from all of it.
No.
And I'm so glad that we get our own experiences of how amazing you were in that season. We have our own testimonies of how awesome you were.
Right.
And it's only brought us closer. It's
Mhm.
only made me respect you more.
Right.
And it's only made the story more genuine because you have witnesses
Yeah.
that tell the story.
Well, your mom was a rock star during all of this.
Yeah, she was.
The way she had to step up, fought in faith, fought in prayer, kept everything, at least in the moment when she was alone. She was going through that alone
Yeah.
No, I can't.
up there at the hospital. We didn't have everybody right there by her side. She was in that emergency room alone.
Mm.
And she didn't waver one bit. She kept
Mm-mm.
fighting. And that's where we knew, okay, man, we're going to come out of this in the long run because as long as she was on my side, we were together as one, we're going to be all right.
Well, as we bring this to a close, I think one of the reasons why this book has been shaped into really your 42 moment, but helping others finish well, is when we were processing the book out loud, questioning, talking about it, how do we make this happen? You were asked the question, what is your life message? It's the first question you were asked.
Mhm.
What's your life message? We knew we were gathering to discuss the heart attack and the 42 moments. We know the messages associated with that. If God could use these men, ungodly men, to save a godly man, how much more in reverse, all that. You didn't say any of that. You sat there with tears in your eyes like this and you said, I need to finish well.
Mm.
And that took the whole room by surprise because we thought, here he is, doesn't smell like smoke, seems to have beaten it. I mean, it's so far behind you, and yet you're still thinking, I need to finish well.
Yeah.
So the truth is, this isn't just for people who are going through it right now.
Mm-hmm.
This is for people who are on the mountain.
Yeah.
You got to finish on the mountain.
Yeah.
It's for people in the valley. You can get out and then still finish well.
Yes.
So we all need this book. It's not really something to pull you out of a hole. It's something to make sure that you run the race with endurance.
Good.
Yes.
So when you're done, you can hear God say, hey, good job.
Mhm.
And I think we can say, no matter how often we've done a good job,
Mhm.
we have to do a good job today too.
Yeah.
That's really good.
And that's why people need to get their hands on this.
Yeah.
That's good.
Do you want to close this out?
Well, I'm proud of y'all. I'm proud that as a family, we can go through the latter seasons of life with no real limps. I'm glad that you can make adjustments on the fly. You've learned that life's not perfect. It's
Mhm.
not. Even when you say that you're a Christian, life's not perfect. You're going
Yeah.
to take your hits, but we know from those hits, as long as we get back up. Bible says that a righteous man will fall 7 times and then gets back up, and 7 being the number of finality and perfection and such. He's actually saying, hey, you're going to fall throughout your life, but you can't stay there. You got to get back up. So today, I hope you were inspired by our podcast. We want to encourage you to go get the book 42, A Guide to Finishing Well When You Were Almost Finished. Why? Because if you're not dead, God's not done. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey there, if you enjoyed this episode of the Family Business Podcast with the Alessis, then you'll want to know we've got more insight, more encouragement, more great conversations that we can have on Sundays, and even some surprises coming your way. So you want to make sure you subscribe to our channel and watch one of these next videos here next, because remember, family is everybody's business.